I'm so sorry.
Is that your polite way of saying I fucked your flow up?
Has anyone told you that before?
No comment on the hot thing.
I don't know if any of this is making sense to you. I'm almost crashing out right now.
I'm going into a rant now about working class and all that.
And speaking of lesbians, I am too gay to know what any of these moves are.
Whatever the art is, whatever the vision is, you have to let that be the guiding light.
Being psycho enough to try something is just really the best way to go about life. You know what I mean?
I don't know that I believe in God in the traditional sense, but I do believe in Prince.
Welcome to Unshut, a place where if at any point you feel like you need to shut the up, don't.
Oh yeah. It just looks like I'm in my bedroom, which I am.
Amazing.
Where are you? Are you in LA?
I am not. I'm in Austin at the moment.
Oh, right on.
What part of LA are you in?
I'm in Glendale, but like the part of it that's close to like do you know LA? Are you
I
familiar?
do. Yeah.
The part of it that's like close to kind of like Eagle Rock.
Yeah,
That
very
part.
cool. Those are
Yeah.
my stomping grounds right there.
Oh, nice.
I actually grew up in Highland Park, Pasadena area as well.
Nice.
How long have you been there?
In this place, like 9 months, but I've kind of generally lived on this side of town since I moved to LA, which was like 10 years ago.
Where were you at before this? Kansas City, if I'm not mistaken, or?
Yeah, so let me think. So I was born in the Atlanta area. Then we moved to Tehran, Iran, because my dad's Iranian, lived there for a few years. Then he took a job in KC, of all places. So then I kind of came of age there in like middle high school formative years. And then I moved to Nashville thinking that that was a good idea. Not a good idea. I mean, I learned a lot and I'm thankful for the people I got to meet there, but it was like not my scene. And then I moved back to KC and then to LA.
Would you ever go back to any of those places you've zigzagged around?
I would live part-time in KC if I could. I think about doing that sometimes, but like I didn't premeditate ending up in LA. It wasn't like I was like, that's the town for me. It's just where doors opened for me. I think all places have their pros and cons, LA included. And so I guess that what I'm trying to say is I think day-to-day life in KC is great and actually really overlooked and underrated. I don't like the winters, but it feels like baby Chicago kind of, but like more affordable and more accessible. And of course, I have like lots of good old friends there. So I think I would keep a place there if I could, but then I'm constantly doing stuff in LA. Like that's where my stuff is. So I have to kind of stay here. Tehran, I love too. It's been way too long since I've been back, but it's like a beautiful, beautiful city. And that's like, that's where I'm from at a molecular level. You know what I mean? So that's like going to, where your heritage is from. So that's like a different experience.
No, totally. It's a different connection. Would you say that moving around to all of these places has kind of, in a way, been beneficial to you as an artist? And whether it's behind the music or in front of the music now with your latest project, has the moving around helped you with navigating all the different personalities in the industry, such as, I don't know why I just said such as like that at the end. I'm sorry. I don't know. That just came out.
Oh, such as many people we could name. But yeah, I mean, 100%. You know how like you being whoever, a person, one, I guess, is only capable of kind of accessing their own experience, unless they push themselves out of that purview. And I guess I'm just lucky that my experience was varied in that way geographically. But I also probably went a good portion of my life not consciously necessarily thinking about that because it was just my life. And then now that I'm older and I have toured and traveled so much and I've contrasted people I've toured with's POV on things versus mine, and I've contrasted that also with people that don't travel or maybe weren't raised in multiple countries or places or biculturally, I now recognize that it's like special and advantageous and in a weird way like something of a superpower. When you're just like a kid, for example, and you're just experiencing that, you're not thinking like, wow, this is formative and important and it's going to help me in the future. You're just living your life. But yeah, I think it's for me now I can like actively tap into it. But there's also a huge portion of it that is subconscious. It's just like in there.
I can totally relate to that because I moved around a lot when I was younger, and I feel like it really does become a tool eventually that could either be something that, you use to your advantage. And I know for me, I've always told people that the moving around and seeing so many different walks of life is one of the reasons why I think, for me personally, I was able to think so quick on my toes and, be put in situations where I didn't struggle with adapting. I was just like, all right, I'm immersing myself with all different types of walks of life. And I think that that really did help me in my profession, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah, you just learn to go with the flow, right?
Totally. And how many years would you say you've been actively in the music industry professionally?
Oh man, I guess that depends on where you want to draw the line where it becomes professional, you know? I mean, like I have been playing music since I was like maybe 12, 13, somewhere around there. And then I would say professionally, you could probably say like 19, 20, although that would be like low level professional, you know? But it was like playing in, regionally touring bands at that age that were getting guarantees and, had booking representation and that sort of thing. So that's professional, I guess, at the lowest level. I've continued to chisel away at trying to make it better and better and better since then. I definitely started young. And I also was out of the house taking care of myself very young, like, out of necessity. Had a kind of a bumpy ride. It still isn't a backup plan, still is not a trust fund or anything like that. It's just kind of like sink or swim.
How old was that, if you don't mind me asking?
I was on my own by the time I was 16.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was pretty formative as well. I mean, I know people think about their formative years being like, maybe elementary school or middle school or whatever, which they are, and they were for me too, but being totally self-supporting, self-sustaining in every way, like roof over your head, where you're going to eat, everything at that age it can be very difficult, and it was. But also it's another thing that now I can look at. At the time, I was just toiling, trying to keep my head above water and find out where my next meal was from. But now I'm like, it sounds weird to say you're thankful for suffering, but I'm like, that taught me a lot, and I got through it, and I can touch that and access that.
You said it so beautifully. I feel like it's one of the reasons why you're able to make a career out of this because you don't have another choice. And I think that that really does give you a fighting chance in any industry. I always say it's not always just about the performing arts. I mean, it takes grit to really pursue anything that you want to pursue in life. And I feel like not having that backup cushion to fall back on really does give you no other option than to fucking bet on yourself like no one else, you know?
Yeah, you just got to go for it, right?
Exactly. Do you feel like that is something that, like you said, you're able to kind of tap into it now, but it's the reason why with pursuing this new project of yours? I mean, I'm sure it's terrifying because every artistic adventure we take, when it's you that's on the front line, like it really is intimidating. It's scary. It's very vulnerable. But tapping into that is one of the reasons why you are able to do it because you're like, well, listen, I've ate shit in the past. I didn't have a home. I didn't have food. So what's the worst that can happen? Let me just dive into it.
What you just said is exactly correct. And I can elaborate on that, but like literally, I at times didn't know where my next meal was coming from, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't say that to be like boo hoo hoo. I mean, the reality is that there's millions of people that are in that same situation and far worse at the moment. So I don't point that out about myself to assert that I'm special. In a weird way, I pointed out to assert the opposite, which is just that I'm just a dude like any other person that had to just figure it out. You know, that being said, just like all those people who are all individually inspiring in their own ways, even if you've never heard of them, they've just had to be resilient and figure it out. And they're all around us. Like there's probably 100 people within 100 yards of me right now that have their own version of that story. I think that's the cool thing about art is that you can try to portray that for all those people that may not be artistically inclined because I don't subscribe to the notion that artists are more valuable than other people in society. However, I do subscribe to the notion that art is important and valuable. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I kind of reject like celebrity culture and I kind of reject like classism as a notion and an ideology. Surprise, surprise, the guy that came up rough and tumble thinks that. Um, but at the same time, I place extreme value on art and on making art and on the importance of protecting artists. So I think that when you have lived through difficulty and you don't consider yourself any better than anyone else that has or hasn't, you can allow yourself to be like a vessel and just like a harbinger of those notions, which is how I see myself. Like I think of myself less like I'm cool because I play music and I'm cool because I worked hard. You know how sometimes people that work hard, they then develop a chip on their shoulder instead of working hard and moving forward in life and being like constantly humble about that. I'm always turned off by that when people go the chip on their shoulder route. So yeah, I think trying to double back to what you said, but I'm sorry for being long-winded because you're tying it all together and I have a lot to say about it.
No, I love it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I knew that I wanted to to be involved with music because music bit me or infected me or whatever you want to say. It's like a zombie outbreak. Like I got bit by the bug, you know, and then I was like, well, I'm a zombie now, you know? Like I don't know, I didn't premeditate it. It feels like it chose me and it was my outlet and continues to be, and it's the thing that I care about, but I never saw it as a glamour profession. And I don't know if that's because I was raised in like a, you know, I was like raised by a kind of a not so creative architect father and like by a mom who didn't play music or anything necessarily, but was very like musical. She played the radio a lot and stuff. But my point is like I wasn't raised by like a painter or a musician. And then I also found myself in this situation where I had to make ends meet. So a lot of people going through that, I think it would be like, fuck this, I can't be irresponsible enough to be a musician. I've got to make ends meet. But for some reason, I went that way, and I had many, many starving artist day jobs along the way to support it. But I always kind of had the eye on the prize of like, I have to take care of my shit and be responsible for myself and for others, but I also have to honor this thing in me. And so many, many years of fronting bands that have come and gone, many, many years of just being a support role in bands that have come and gone, many, many years of working, not even as a musician in the music industry, working as a guitar tech or, you know, a support role in that way, just to stay in the industry. And so now, Darker Lighter, this record, you know, that moniker, this whole notion, I feel like it's the culmination of all of it. And I feel like it took me until this point, fighting tooth and nail to get the resources I need to make what I was hearing and seeing in my head be the reality on the tape. And I was talking to a friend of mine who I know very intimately for the past 10 years and they know like my musical mind and everything. They know my struggles and all. And they were like talking to me about the record. And so they can read into it a lot more than probably someone who doesn't know me, like lyrically and stuff. And I was telling them, I think I could have made this record 10 years ago. Maybe I would not have executed it as slickly or whatever, or maybe, you know, maybe I would have been 10 years less of skilled as a vocalist or a guitar player or arranger or whatever, but the concept has been there like a long, long, long time. You know, to have access to what you logistically need to make it a reality, you know?
Well, and I think you're the perfect example of what it means to put your art first. I think that a lot of people, like you said, they really do get lost in the fabrication of what this world could really give you. And I think that putting your art first is so important because there's no more of a vulnerable and honest way to honor what it is that you're trying to say, what it is that you're trying to project without honoring that craft first and not getting lost in the what could happen if this quote unquote thing were to take off, if that makes sense. And I think that it's the reason why, even though, like you said, you've had a lot of starving artist moments in your life, you've been able to be self-sufficient. You've been able to allow this art to take you as far as it's taken you. And I mean, even just now, you just did a, you know, guitar tech, you said, for Kate Hudson. Like you've worked with Foo Fighters. You've been almost like this magnet of putting you in collaborations with some incredible artists who are using their art for whatever reason that's personal to them, but you're magnetizing that. You're a magnet to that. And I think that that speaks volumes. Putting your art first speaks volumes.
I agree. Thanks for saying that. Yeah. I mean, I think more artists need to figure out how to get themselves out of the way of their own art. At risk of digressing into some long soliloquy, I'll just say that I think that modern society is over individualistic. And I mean, look, I'm the world's biggest Bowie and Prince fan, and I'm sure that they were very self-absorbed at times. And I'm sure that I can be that way too at times, and all artists can be at times. But I do think that those two, for example, just using two examples, I think that while they were totally absorbed in their own world, and at times that probably also absorbed their own ego and consciousness, it is very clear that they had some like broad, big vision that they were channeling and stuff. And so I'm not trying to say that there were never icons in the past. I'm not trying to say that there was never individualism in society or in music, but I do think that we are now in an age of just like kind of unhinged, toxic individualism, not just in the art world, but like culturally, regardless of what one thinks about this and whether they support it or not. The fact is, we are in late stage capitalism. And so you introduce someone like me into that. or for that matter, someone quite opposite of me who's willing to do whatever it takes for their brand or whatever. And you see what is rewarded and what is not rewarded by modern society and by the system. And so it's like, if you have no scruples and no artistic integrity and you're willing to do whatever it takes to get a moment in the sun or to get a viral moment or whatever, then you can have what you define as success. Then you've got a dinosaur like me who wants to make music with no auto tune and play the guitars and, play them in tune and take the time to mic things with real microphones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So art is subjective, and I guess I'm reflecting on some degree of the subjectivity of that, but also what the powers that be in the industry and in our society have deemed as valuable. But I do think that regardless of your genre, regardless of your process, regardless of the technicality of how you make your art, I think that what you said is true about the fact that you have to let whatever the art is, whatever the vision is, you have to let that be the guiding light. And you have to figure out what is it that will support that. Does it mean recording in a big, giant, old school studio with a tape machine and a giant recording console? Does it mean not doing that because you don't want that sound? So all I can ever do is do it the way that I feel it should be done.
Of course. And I'm glad you brought up the word vision when it came to listening to your project in entirety. That was one of my favorite things about your project, which we'll talk about later. But I'm truly curious to ask you just, you're talking about being a guitar tech, all these, faces in this industry, right? And something I remember writing down was, do you remember the moment you realized working in it wasn't enough and it was time for you to become your own artist and come to the front, if that makes any sense?
It does, yeah. What's weird is people that have known me a long time are still scratching their heads about the fact that I'm known to a lot of other people as a guitar tech. Because to so many people that have known me since I was young, they're like, no, that's the musician guy I know. So I'm the token, like, songwriter, starving artist, musician to those people. For example, people I would have grown up with in Kansas City. And then to a lot of people in LA, depending on which group of people you're talking about, I'm the guitar tech guy that's like in demand to guitar tech. And then to another small section of indie musicians in LA, I'm just another LA indie musician. So it's not like I have a Jekyll and Hyde thing going on. It's that practically speaking, I have to wear multiple hats. So whatever hat I'm wearing on the day that you meet me is who you might think of me as. It's not like I set out to become a guitar tech and then I worked as one for X amount of time and then I decided, okay, now I'm going to start. What really happened was I started playing music, bass first, then drums, then guitar. Then I started writing music. Then I was in bands. Then I had my own bands, and those two things coexisted and wove in and out of each other. And then well into my 20s, probably like my early mid 20s, I was just like sick of working starving artist jobs, retail or whatever it might have been. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm not making my full income just playing clubs, then how can I, make more money within the industry? And I never consciously thought I would be a guitar tech. And I became one accidentally, basically just because I was the responsible person in every band I was in. And I have two brothers who are far more technically gifted than me naturally. Like their brains are more engineer technical-ish naturally. They are very creative people too, but everyone's a mix of certain things. I have a technical brain too, but like in more of an organizational way, in more of like a process, get things done, practical way, and less of like an engineering way. So I guess that people identified that aspect of me and they were like, okay, he knows how to make a guitar sound good, how to make their equipment work, how to set it up well. And so was identified basically for friends' bands as like a good person to support that. So I sort of accidentally became a guitar tech, but I realized I could tour just as much, if not more, as a tech than I could as a player because unfortunately, finding someone responsible and like technically on it is harder in that world than finding like a good guitar player. I started just getting calls to do that. And one thing led to another, and I learned more and more and more until I ascended to this like sort of higher level of being like a, sort of top level guitar tech person. But I still, when I wake up in the morning, I don't wake up and go, oh, it feels good to be a guitar tech today. I wake up and I feel I am a musician. I'm a songwriter and a singer and a guitar player and a bass player. And, it's like in a producer, like that's who I am. I don't spend my free time looking up new guitar gear. I spend my free time on creativity, but I'm very on top of the technical stuff. So I think that a lot of people I tech for feel comfortable because they're like, I'm not just talking to a nerd or to like a mechanic. If you've ever had a good mechanic, I know that's rare. And you go and you can actually shoot the shit with them and you actually like them and they can also fix your car. I think that's my personality as a guitar tech. But anyway, to answer your question, I hadn't quit music, but I'd put my own music aside for a while just out of not having enough time and just touring the world and guitar teching, and I had all these concepts and melodies and demos and things that were piling up inside of me, you know, and I was like feeling very creatively unfulfilled, and I knew that I needed to get them out, and I knew I was approaching having, for the first time in my life, having the logistical resources available to get them out in a way that was meaningful and that was like, as I said earlier, that was going to match my vision. So yeah, there was a moment five-ish years ago where I was like, it's time to put a record out, you know, and to start zeroing in on making that a reality. But it was like interestingly, almost like returning back to what I originally am and was. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does. And you mentioned something earlier about wearing all these different hats. Was there ever a moment where putting on all these different hats intimidated you to keep pursuing this? Was there ever a time where you were like, fuck this? This is way too much to juggle. I don't know that I have the chops for it, if that makes sense.
Literally every single day. Every single, yeah, it's not like I'm unhappy or I don't like it. I enjoy it 90% of the time, but there's that 10% of the time I'm like, fuck, this is a lot. There's a funny kind of pseudo political term. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like a slang term, the grill pill. Have you heard of this?
I have not, no.
Okay, it refers to like people that are so sick of the noise in the world, whatever their version of that is, that they're just like, fuck this, I'm taking the grill pill, which means that they're just gonna like check out and just like, you know, just grill some burgers, turn the radio on, just tune everything out and just live just that like normal life. Sometimes I'm like, should I take the grill pill? Should I just get out of Dodge and just like, you know, just walk the dog, grill some food, watch a Netflix show and not think about like having aspirations, wanting to create art, how to support that. You know, like it's like juggling 20 things every day. But then I'm like, no, you know, like it's just like I think everyone, no matter what they do, probably someone who works in an office, their version of that, if they've already taken the grill pill, so to speak, their version of that is like, should I go nuts? Should I like quit my job and like go try something insane? You know, so I have my moments for sure where I'm like exhausted from juggling and from taking one hat on and putting the other one on. And I'm like, fuck, should I keep doing this? I'm so tired right now or whatever. But I think the reason I keep doing it is because what I'm really driven by is that spark that we talked about earlier, that artistic vision. And so for me, what that looks like is having to support that in ways, you know, because someone else may just have the financial or logistical freedom to just wake up every day and only do that 12 hours a day. I don't know what that's like. My entire life up until this point, I've only ever had to fight tooth and nail for the space and the energy and the resources and the money to do what I want to do in life. And so I kind of don't know how to live my life not doing that.
Dude, thank you so much for saying that because that was one of the most relatable things I've heard literally in the past couple of weeks. I have been not struggling with it, but I have also been having those days. I mean, since I started the show, almost every day I'm like, what the fuck am I doing this? Like, what am I doing this for? Like, why am I putting myself through all the struggles that I put myself through to make this shit happen? And then I go back to that spark. I go back to that calling, to that, wait a minute, remember everything you said you wanted when you were this immigrant kid at 6 years old selling food out on the streets in LA. This is what you wanted. And sure enough, I will say this, not that it always plays out this way for me. Every single day when I battle those emotions, I almost get these little hints that the universe sends me that's like, you're right on track. Look what you've done with this. Look at what you've accomplished with that. The universe has a very clever way of reminding us that when we remind ourselves of that spark, that's the fuel we need. That's all the fuel we need.
Absolutely. And remember also that what you just shared, being an immigrant kid coming over, doing what you had to do to make ends meet, and even getting to where you are literally right now in this moment, that's like a huge accomplishment that requires more, has required and continues to require more fortitude and more focus and more like will and more stamina and more heart than a lot of people will ever even be able to touch in their life. I hate to use these kinds of terms because they make my eyes roll, especially in LA with like all the new age woo woo bullshit. But it that is kind of, for lack of a better term, like a blessing because it feels at times like a curse. Of course, at times it sounds like for you and for me, you're like, I'm out of gas. I can't keep doing it. But then you just do it. And when you do it, even if your name's not in lights in Times Square and you're not like being given traditional capitalist accolades and you're not, you know, making six figures or whatever, you're like, you know what I have that is irreplaceable is like that. I have the spark, you know? And that's the coolest fucking thing in the world, man. When you read about whoever your inspirations were or are, and I read about mine, Obviously, for me, a lot of musicians, but certainly not only musicians. I'm extremely inspired by people that are not even in the arts, too. Most of them were not driven by trying to achieve like traditional success, and they were just driven by like either practical necessity to make something happen so that they could live, or they were driven by a vision, and you have that.
Dude, I appreciate it. I definitely needed that reminder today because I am just like giggling on the inside like a little schoolgirl about the spark. I think it's so important. I hope that so many people listen to this and are just reminded of their spark. There's power in reminding yourself of that spark. And talking about spark real quick, what sparked Darker Lighter? I usually don't like to talk about where the name came from. I like to kind of stray away from like those basic questions, but this is truly one that fascinated me. Why the name?
I'm glad you asked that actually because it was a slog to get to the name. My name is Salar Rajabnik, and it's just my name to me. But to a lot of people, to a lot of white folks, it may as well be gobbledygook, And it doesn't matter how many times you say, it's like Saul, that show you've seen, Better Call Saul? And people say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Or, like the name Saul. Yeah, my friend's named Saul. Okay, say Saul with an R on the end of it. Salar. And they're just like, Sailor? Solar? Solar? I'm very proud of my name. I'm proud of what it means. I'm proud of the culture it represents. I'm proud of what my name specifically means, et cetera, et cetera. But you have to consider commercial viability. Not that I'm driven by that, but I'm like, I want people to be able to remember and say and know my music by what it's known as. And then also, I grew up playing in bands and in a fantasy scenario, alternate reality where I have everything my way. I'm not a solo artist and I'm in a band with 4 or 5 other people that are badasses that I love to collaborate with, that I want to work with. But the practical reality of where I find myself now is that I either don't have those collaborators or I can't afford them because I can't afford to outbid St. Vincent and people like that. For the people that are in there, that's an indirect shout out to my friend Jason who plays with her and with Beck, who's like my dream bandmate. If I could like just put a band together, of like superstars, I
Oh
can't
yeah.
afford to hire those people, and to make them my collaborators. So for me, it's like rather than trying to twist a bunch of people that are just trying to make it work, twist their arms into being around, I would rather just craft the vision myself. And so when it came to the name, I'm obsessed with monochromatic aesthetic. I love Fellini's Eight and a Half, that film. I love black and white photography. I don't know. I don't know why. I just am. It's like probably something I that grabbed me when I was a kid before I could consciously think about it. I don't know if it was a knee-jerk reaction to like the Dayglow 80s and 90s thing. I don't know, but it's just who I am. So I love black and white aesthetics, but I'm also constantly thinking about dialectical materialism because I am a socialist. And so dialectical materialism is that thing that I came to, I think, because of being forced to experience it in my life, which is the juxtaposition between conditions in society and your material specific conditions, which was my whole life. Society requires XYZ to live, to eat, to have a roof over your head. I must therefore do these things. So there's already this contrast thing happening. We all struggle with dark thoughts, light thoughts. We all struggle with feeling depressed and then feeling hope. And so that's my life. All the names that I thought just sounded cool because they sounded like a band that would have been around in the era that I dig music. Those names were all taken. And so I was just like for literally for over like for years. I still have it on my phone. I had this note saved, band names. And I would just see something or think of something and it's always fucking taken. I'd just be like in a cab, like, oh, that'd be cool. Look it up. Gone. Taken. I just was so tired of it. And I knew I needed a moniker because I knew I wanted to feel like a band. I knew I wanted it to be, kind of wanted to hide behind the moniker because I'm not really comfortable being like me, 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 me. I'm a solo artist. And then I was talking to my friend Kirk, shout out Kirk, about it. And I think I maybe had already been playing with versions of the word dark and versions of the word light. He suggested like dark lights, maybe, or something like that. Something similar, It was like I had the raw notion and then he kind of helped massage it into place a little bit. And then I took it from there. I was like, no, I get it now. And then I ran with it. And then I did like a million versions of darkness, light, light, darkness. Like I played with all the various ways to phrase it and then landed on darker, lighter, I think, because there's an artist, Nick Drake, who I really love. And he released a record called Brighter Later. and that record is like top record for me. So of course I have like there's like a physical or a audio connotation to like brighter later, darker later. That's a deep cut that probably so few people would even pick up on. So that was cool. That was a good sign for me. It emoted the things that I'm describing. It also is very black and white sounding in terms of that aesthetic, and I think it has a good ring to it. So, and also it was not taken. So that's important too. So that's how I ended up on that.
I think it's the coolest story ever, and I do love that aesthetic too. I love the vinyl. I haven't ordered it yet because if I'm being a real bitch about it, I was like, not going to order until I know he for sure shows up to the interview. Because believe it or not, it does happen a lot. I mean, not anymore, but it used to. I would get so excited to have an artist on, and then I would sit on Zoom by myself for like a fucking hour before I'm like,
Oh,
yeah, I
cool.
don't think this is happening.
There's too many brats out there. It's just like be a person of your word. You say you're gonna do something, then do it.
Exactly. So I think, for me, I was like, I'm definitely going to order it. I love the vibe. I'm a huge like vinyl collector. I mean, I'm talking like Judy Garland collections. Like I am
Oh wow,
obsessed with
yeah.
vinyls. I mean, I also have like a very crazy story with her daughter, Liza Minnelli. She's someone I actually grew up with because my mom worked with her, long story short. And so I
Holy
have
shit.
this like stupid connection to vinyl records. And so yours, I'm like, I cannot wait to order. I just got to make sure he shows up first.
Crazy. Liza Minnelli. Wow.
Oh, yeah, she was a huge part of my childhood. She was one of the first people that truly showed my family true compassion. And I was so young, I was impacted by her in a way I cannot even put into words. So, yeah, it's crazy.
I have a few stories like that too with people that maybe people wouldn't expect to be that cool. But you know what's so amazing to me about that is I don't know Liza Minnelli, but it's rad to hear that because she was from that era that is past now. It's not like there's not celebrities and icons now. There are. I don't know how to put it into words, but it feels different to me. I think maybe it's because of internet culture and because of the mystique is gone. I consider her to be like a capital I icon from that era of like golden age when things were more mysterious. Maybe you couldn't just see an actor at like Gelson's on Google Images or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it was like more mysterious and more there was more mystique to it. It's like old Hollywood or whatever. It's a really amazing for me to think of someone that I view like that, and then just to hear you say that they are a very human person too, that showed you kindness and compassion is really cool. Because as you know, there are many such examples of people of stature, celebrity wise, who are not so good people. But that just goes to show that at all levels of society, there are good and bad people, who choose to conduct themselves with character or not.
Wow,
You
I totally just made a connection on my own show about one of the premises I had when I launched the show, which you kind of articulated way better than I could have ever. I just had this full circle moment real quick because one of the major premises of the show when having musicians on specifically, I used to always tell management or even them if I spoke to them directly was one of my biggest goals was to humanize the artist so that people can connect to them beyond their artistry. And I never really knew how to articulate that. And you just articulated it so well for me. So sorry to make it about me real quick, but I
No,
love
no,
it.
no, no, that's great. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, if you are an artist or an actor or an actress or whatever you do in life and you consider yourself to be post-human or better than other humans, then you can fuck off. That's just
100%.
the easy way for me to say it, I mean, it's like it's weird. Like I have to work and do get to work with people of great sort of societal importance or whatever to they're viewed that way in society, and I absolutely respect their station in life. But I think that one of the reasons why I get called to work with them and they're comfortable working with me is because I don't treat them like not a human. I treat them with respect and due respect for what they have accomplished and what they're doing. And I have great admiration for, I learn from them and I help assist them with what they do. But at the end of the day, even if there are people that like having their ass kissed and they like being treated like a god or something, even if they can't consciously understand and realize it, it's not good for them. You're destroying your humanity by living a lifestyle like that. And like I felt that way even before living in Los Angeles, but ending up in LA, not accidentally, but just by way of my path. Like I have to avoid those kinds of people and that kind of mentality, not only in LA, but also just like sort of culturally and socially and on social media, whatever. I have to avoid that to stay sane because it's disgusting to me. I know that sounds maybe contradictory to someone who just sees me working with all these notable people, but I don't see it that way. So that's why how I'm able to navigate it. And it's not like I have contempt for famous people or anything like that. I don't. I mean, some of them, yeah, the ones who are bad people. I don't have contempt for it. I have contempt for any human being feeling like they have the right to mistreat another human being or to be treated differently than another human being because of their accomplishment or whatever. Because as we said earlier, there are people who no one has ever heard of who are not publicly known for producing something or art or what or entertainment. They're the real rock stars, you know. They've done things and are doing things every single day that are just fucking mind-blowing, that require so much skill and talent and resilience, you know, and they're often the people quietly doing those things with their heads down so that we can just live normal lives and have things like sanitation, air conditioning, whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so that's I'm going into a rant now about working class and all that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. And I'm covered in goosebumps because that is part of the process of where my mind immediately goes to when I conduct interviews. It's humanizing the artist before we even talk about the artistry, which is why in a lot of episodes, I do segments where we shoot the shit or, I kind of like try to get you to think quick on your toes because it really is a good way to get a glimpse of who you are authentically when you are not being scripted, when you are not talking about, well, I wrote this song when I was going through this period of time. It's like I want to kind of strip my guest out of that first before we tap into that. And so I
Sure.
have also realized that that is one of the ways that I get to give my guest a shot at talking about things that they've never talked about on record before. It's one of the reasons why I like to consider the show very creative and collaborative versus just an interview of talking to me about you the whole time. And so
Yeah, absolutely. Rather than just like canned questions all the time.
exactly, which we are going to talk about some of your tracks, specifically some of your lyrics, because they were some of my favorites that I couldn't have you on and not talk about them. But before we do that, I want to shoot the shit with you a little bit and I want to share with you something I journaled. Are you ready?
Yeah, hit me.
Scrolling through Instagram, I saw a picture of him wearing a soccer jersey, and this is all I journaled. Damn, he could make a hot soccer player. Has anyone told you that before?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about soccer. Soccer is my outlet that is not music. It is the only time and place, not so much when I'm watching. To a certain degree, when I'm watching, it stimulates me mentally in a way that most other things don't in terms of just entertainment. But when I'm playing, it's better than any therapy. It's the only time when I am not thinking about a million other things, thinking about writing songs, thinking about what I've got to do, thinking about errands. I think in a weird way, though, maybe it's good that I didn't pursue it professionally because I feel like if I did, maybe I would or wouldn't have had any degree of success at any small or big level, whatever, who knows. But maybe it would feel more like a job or something. And now I can just do it for release and for an outlet. I'm quite competitive when I do it and I really take it seriously. It's not like I'm just kind of like lollygagging. It's like that combination of the high you get when you're exercising and then maybe the high, so to speak, you get mentally from something really stimulating, whatever that is for you. And also there is a creativity element for me with it, majorly. Because it's not just kickball in one direction. It's very like angles and physics and stuff. So yeah, I mean like and it's cool because out here in Los Angeles, like there's perfect weather all the time. So like I play on a team and then I also play in a various pickup games that are mostly artists, musicians. Recently, I found out a guy that plays in one of the pickup games I play in is like a famous actor because like some of the people in the game were asking him for autographs afterwards. But what I liked about it was I was like, oh, that guy's just a good center back, you know? Like I wasn't thinking like, wow, a famous person. I was just like, man, that guy's a good defender. So anyway, yeah, soccer is like a major passion for me. No comment on the hot thing, but yeah, I mean it's been said, but that's subjective.
Well, your response couldn't have been any better because something I also wrote down is hopefully soccer is a big part of his life because this next segment is officially going to be called Bend It Like Darker Lighter. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm going to give you a soccer move and tell me the first thing that comes to mind if you were to write a song inspired by that move. The first one I have, Step Over.
Step over. I'd probably write a song about getting dicked around in your life.
Amazing. The next one I have, Elastico.
A fuck you song to someone that dicked you over. So it's like you got
Perfect.
screwed over. It's like fuck you. I got over on you.
Exactly. The next one, Inside Hookup.
Well, there's some low-hanging fruit there that could be written about, but I would say I'd probably do what I'm known to do. I'd probably overanalyze it and write it about some kind of like deeply interpersonal niche thing.
Amazing. The next one I have is Nutmeg.
Hmm. I'd either write it about humiliating someone or write it about being humiliated.
Perfect. The last one I have for you, and this was the only one I could come up with something, and I'll share mine after yours. Mine's scissors.
Oh, like a scissor kick?
Yeah.
That to me, that's like if you can ever pull that move off, it's like the audacity to try it. And then if you get it, it's just like past the audacity, it's like, holy fuck, I tried to pull it off and I actually did it. So I'd probably try to bottle that energy into a song in some way. Like I'm psycho enough to have tried this thing and it worked, you know?
Amazing. Being psycho enough to try something is just really the best way to go about life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's what I am, is unhinged enough to keep doing all this stuff, you know?
Hell yeah, a little bit of psycho goes a long way. I definitely, for this one, I wrote Scissors, maybe a song about lesbians. And speaking of lesbians, I am too gay to know what any of these moves are.
Oh, you don't, so you just had to look them up?
I did. I used Google. I have no idea what any of those are.
If you look them up and then the word compilation after the words, you'll just see like however many minutes of hot dudes doing them. So you should do it.
Exactly. There you go. Look at
By the
that.
way, can I just, there's a brag here for me on the part of soccer as a sport. Come on, the hottest dudes. You know, not that there are not hot dudes and hot non-dudes playing other sports, but come on.
Exactly. Well, since you kind of went with it, I actually scratched this off my notes to say out loud, but I put on here, since I don't know any of these moves, if you ever want to put a jersey on and teach me, I promise I'll focus. I'm so sorry.
You should come to one of our game. Like we have this like yeah artistic creative pickup game. There's like several games I play in, and one of them is like anyone is welcome. We've had people come out that have literally never kicked a ball. They look like Bambi on ice, you know, but they're just there for the hang. And there's like a million water breaks, you know, and it's just a hang. So you're cordially invited to that. If
Amazing.
you
Next time I'm in LA, I'm definitely going to hit you up and be like, hey, so when's the match?
yeah, it's Fridays. So yeah,
Amazing. Well,
yeah,
we definitely, couldn't talk about inspiration to music without talking about your latest project that I'm obviously a super big fan of. I love the writing, I love the sound. Your first lead single was Hanging On. What
yeah.
made this the first leading single to this entire project for you?
You know, I actually kind of wanted to subvert the fact that it has like big single energy, and I kind of wanted to put one of the other songs out first. But I talked to my collaborator, Robert Adam Stevenson. He's like the only human musically involved with the record other than me. He ran the gear and the console and stuff while I was playing musical chairs. But he also was like my confidant and my producer in the project. And because of that, I really trust his opinion. His voice goes a long way for me in terms of collaboration and everything. So he felt like we should put that one out first for his reasons, right? And then I've worked with this other collaborator on kind of the logistical record release side of things, Michelle Garamoni. The record came out on her label imprint Mishi. She's got the music business mind, you know, that I don't have. Like she knows how to navigate that whole world. And she also felt like that was the first choice. And I talked to a few other people too. I struggle with like seeing my own music the way other people see it. Like it's hard for me to remove myself from it. I made it, but also it is so deeply personal for me. Like I know some people are good at writing story songs about other people and stuff. I've done that before, but I'm more like a person who writes about their own stuff. So there, because of that, it's hard for me to peel myself away from it. So I sometimes have to lean on other people and their perspective. But I think also Hanging On has energy and it has grit, but it also is poppy maybe more than some of the other stuff. To me, at least, it's the most obviously influenced by Prince, who's like my idol. I bow at the altar of Prince. I don't know that I believe in God in the traditional sense, but I do believe in Prince.
Hell yeah.
I was concerned also though because I felt like people were going to expect a whole record that sounded like 11 more tracks of that. And the record is, I don't think it sounds like 12 different bands, but it sounds like a band with range. Sometimes that can be a bad thing in the modern world. Like if you're putting music out now, they're like, what's your niche? Stick to the niche. Do not variate from the niche. Pander to the niche. Lean into it. And I'm not that way. I'm like, no, I have a one song that sounds like Prince. I have another song that sounds like Badfinger, and on and on and on and on, because that's all swimming around inside of me. So anyway, that's why Hanging On was chosen first.
I love this answer so fucking much, dude, because I miss the times where albums were either confusing in a good way, and I do love the fact that your album really did have a roller coaster of storytelling. I mean, it was so hard for me to narrow it down to just a couple of songs to talk about because I was like, that line, that song, that title track, why did he say this way? Like, it was truly storytelling, dude, 100%.
Oh, thanks. Well, that makes me feel really good because that is exactly what I set out to do. My record is not for, no offense to these people, it's not for Swifties, you know? And it's not because I'm hating on Swifties. It's just, look at me. I'm not from that world. It's not for anyone. If a Swiftie wants to get into it, then great. It's for people like you. I can tell from the way you just talked about it that you grew up listening to albums, digging the flow of them, you know, and being like, what was this interesting? Like, wow, this person has that side of them, you know? Like a song hits after the song you just listened to, you've been vibing with the rock feel of the prior song or whatever, and then you got a pop feel all of a sudden. You're like, interesting. There's more to this person than I thought. Now all heard bad versions of that where it's obviously 10 different producers. It's like this is the Fleetwood Mac song, this is the AC/DC song, and it all feels very canned. That sucks. When you hear a band or an artist or an album as you used to do back when there used to be more budgets to support being creative and taking your time and exploring. That's the cool thing that you get when you listen to a record, right? So my record was very much made with that in mind on purpose. It's an album. It's not a concept album. It's not like there's like act one, act two, linear storyline. It's supposed to be like a bit of a roller coaster, but also it is all as a work, as a whole record. It's also all supposed to feel like one person though. Yeah, that's the thing
Exactly.
when you listen to your favorite records, for me at least, it still always does feel like that band. It just feels like you're being led into the various rooms in their house, so to speak. That's how it should be. So it does me good to hear that that was impressed on you as a listener.
Dude, totally. I mean, even just the roller coaster of every single song I journaled, the album is filled with hope and with light at the end of the tunnel vibes. And I love that feeling. I love when you can take a topic about, whether it's longing for someone or talking about the highs and lows, but there's still somehow, whether it's the instrumental side of it that just gives you this glimpse of hope. I got that from this album. And something I wanted to talk about is, we were talking about the ups and downs about the industry. And in Shadow of a Doubt, there's a couple of lines that says, if you're high, then I'm headed that way. If you're low, then I'm down. That's okay. The reason I love that so much is because in my interpretation of it, it talks about not only appreciating the highs, but it's also being able to appreciate the lows. Do you feel that way about this musical journey? You're able to appreciate the highs, but you also take in the lows. I almost didn't even want to ask this earlier on in our conversation because you said it so spot on when you were talking about the highs and lows of your fucking journey. I was mind blown. I was trying so hard not to jump to it.
Yeah, well, it's funny. As you know, there's a lot of debate philosophically about what songs are in the sense of like, are they what the person that wrote them says they are, and they mean that, or are they what the listener has interpreted them as? For me, there are songs that mean something very, 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 very meaningful to me, but that meaning that I've interpreted from those songs may not be what the songwriter imbibed into it, but I think that's fucking cool. I think it's cool that like a person can write a song about a relationship and it can be interpreted as something more broad or vice versa. And I think a lot of the best songwriters do that consciously or subconsciously. And that's like on my kind of like checklist of things that I want to actively channel as a songwriter is that thing where there could be multiple meanings to something, sometimes intentionally employing like double entendre, or even triple. That lyric you just read from that song, I love that you interpreted it that way because it probably initially began to be consciously written about a relationship, not necessarily a romantic one, but could be, but like just any relationship where you are committed to staying in a relationship with someone. Could even be really honestly, a family relationship is a really good example where you're like, I'm with you here, by your side, like through all of it. No matter what, and I'm not going to bail when it gets difficult, like a ride or die situation. But it also applies in terms of like your own self in life and experiences, and like I'm not going to give up when shit gets difficult, and I am also going to be stoked when it's going well. you asked something earlier about the ups and downs of it. I can't remember how you phrased it. You did ask much earlier about whether I feel like giving up sometimes when it's, when it's going gets tough. Like full disclosure, I do at times, And there are times when I'm like very depressed in life in general or as an artist, and I'm like, fuck this. It's not like when I come out of that and I decide to keep going, I'm like, okay, whoosh, everything's great now. It's often like very solemn, like I'm gonna keep going. And it's not like, never mind, I don't feel depressed anymore. I just shook it off because I went and spent an hour outside. It's always a process for me. And it's never fully great or fully terrible. It's just like life is full of gray area and life is full of like a process, for me at least, and of being like, I feel very sad right now or depressed right now or frustrated, but I also know at the same time in parallel with that that I have to keep going. Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense, and I wish you could feel my hands right now because they're fucking soaked, dude. I am like having this weird feeling of how magical it is to connect with someone who truly has put their art first. I'm looking down at my notes as you're talking, and all I'm thinking about is how every question I had towards the end, you have already answered without me even having to ask. So I'm going to improvise real quick, and I'm going to read you these things real quick. I am in complete, like, not necessarily feeling like I'm having an outer body experience, but it's crazy how the foreshadowing in our earlier conversations very organically really do answer the questions I had written about your project. And I say that to say that you did a great fucking job at putting your art first.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, I am just totally speechless. So, without going too crazy into it, we talked about capitalism. One of my questions in regards to hanging on was talking about the consequences of us living in someone else's hell, right? Like living in situations that we didn't create for ourselves, but we live in it, right? You mentioned Nothing's Ever Gonna Be the Same Again was a song about channeling rage. And before you talked about how soccer was not just an outlet to express lollygagging, right? You literally go and there's art involved into it because
Yeah.
it's something that you do with intention, right?
Yeah.
In Shadow of a Doubt, we already talked about the highs and lows and that interpretation. We also talked about LA and humanizing people. And I wanted to talk about Electronic Eye. This was one of the songs that I was so fucking obsessed with. And I don't know if any of this is making sense to you. I'm almost crashing out right now.
No, no, I think it is because I think maybe what you're reflecting on is that I'm a weird, heady dude, and I can't help but be that weird, heady dude in my songs as well. So, of course, when I talk about them, it's probably just going to be a continued illumination of what they're already about. Because there's no, for me, for better or worse, that's just how I am. It's kind of like what you see is what you get with me. At least that's how I feel. I don't know if that's your interpretation, but maybe we're just walking and talking through that. And
100%.
yeah, and in terms of Electronic Eye, like, I don't want this to turn into a bashing LA thing because that's not what it is. Because, I love living here, and my LA looks very different than the Tinseltown stereotype that people fantasize about. It's where you grew up. It's brown people, it's immigrant communities supporting each other, and it's working people, and it's ordinary people, and it's all the millions of people that live here that are not celebrities. You know what I mean? But Electronic Eye was not written about a particular place, but you could certainly focus on aspects of LA stereotypically as being representative of what Electronic Eye was written about. But that song is really just flat out about trying to come to terms with living in like modern late capitalist, like creepy dystopian surveillance state, where like literally anything and everything is being recorded, and where there's not only no privacy, there's like individual people just flat out don't care that there's no privacy, and they're just kind of like happy to not have any privacy. There's a book that every human alive should read called Surveillance Valley by Yasha Levine, where he details this and breaks it down, and it's illuminating and terrifying and really interesting. But he talks about, just how sick these tech people are. And I know this is ironic because we're talking on Zoom, but I mean, these are not just nerds who, do dorky things like wear, like 3D headsets or whatever. These are people who have bad, bad, bad plans for humanity. And not in like a conspiracy theory way, like they like to have open meetings and talk about it. They're just creeps. And it's one thing to have your privacy violated. That's strange enough and bad enough. When it goes from privacy violation to like funding weird weapons contracts and technology that helps disintegrate innocent people and that in wars, and those sorts of things, I that's kind of like, yeah, well, that's worse than your privacy being violated, you know. But it all is related, you know. And those things are far more related than people understand. You know, like big tech that's seemingly just making stuff for us to rot our brains to is actually far more tied to death and destruction and like annihilation of human life than people realize. Not just the annihilation of the soul, but like literally, there's a revolving door between defense contractors and weapons manufacturers and warmongers and like tech bros. That song is kind of about that. And it's about like, how the fuck do you just live in that? How do you wake up every morning knowing that you're still trying to do things like have human interactions and love people and walk the dog and whatever when there's like fucking sick fuck doing this stuff? You know what I mean? That's kind of what that song's about.
Everybody's a big star, all in their own way. Anybody can go far if they know the right things to say. No more money in fast cars. The filter is here to stay. Read the script and play the part. Just another face in a play.
I mean, all I can say, dude, is that you have connected the dots to everything that was going through my head while I was listening to your album without even knowing. And, I say this on record all the time. We don't prep for interviews. I don't send the publicist or the artist. I don't send you guys like, I'm going to talk about this and I want to focus on this.
Yeah, we went straight into it.
Exactly. And I just feel like, man, like if this is truly one of the first times on the show where I have been like, oh my gosh, literally within the first 25, 30 minutes of us talking, I'm literally thinking in my head, he's answering all my questions. And you said it so perfectly. It's because what you see is what you get. Your translation has been one of my favorites. And I knew I was going to enjoy this conversation with you, but I didn't know I was going to have this ADHD fucking episode because I was like, oh my gosh, these connections to everything I saved to talk about at the end, he's already answered. It's so fucking beautiful, dude.
Is that your polite way of saying I fucked your flow up? I fucked your plan up?
Dude, you totally
Sorry.
did.
Sorry.
No, but you know what? It's so beautiful. It's beautiful chaos because without moments like that, there is no proof of magical connections. And I think that this is the perfect example of why I always tell people intention is everything. My intention is to not just to talk about how was it like sitting in that room and writing that song. No, let's talk about you. Let's honor who you are, your mind, your soul, where you come from. And that happened completely on its own. And I live for moments like that because this is the example of what I want my show to be. It's not where you come into the show fabricated with questions that you've prepped for. It's about thinking quick on your toes, shooting the shit, but also it's a way that Mo likes to take the layers off for my guests so that they can show up and be themselves. So I appreciate it so much, dude. I'm so like over the moon.
Well, it takes someone who values that and who understands it to get that out of people. So thank you, you know, because whatever, people can just ask me canned questions and I can answer them in 2 sentences. I've done that a million times and I can continue doing that, and that's fine for what it is. But if you can't tell, the reason this is vibing is because this is the type of person I am. I'm a dig deep person, and not in like a let me light my pipe and talk down to you in an intellectual way. Like just in like, no, we're shooting the shit in like in a real way, you know, not in just like a canned way. And that's almost anti-academic and anti-intellectual. It's just raw. To me, that's valuable. It's the human thing. That's where it's at. Actually, speaking of rejecting what electronic eye is about, you know, so we're subverting that because we're using digital communication technology to have a very human conversation, you know, like basically good on you for doing this in a creative way that is specific to you because you should feel good about the fact that it is that because of the fact that that is an outgrowth of who you are.
I am speechless, dude. I appreciate that so much.
Well, thank you for doing that because this was rad. It just felt like talking to a new friend instead of just like next question. You know what I mean? And also thanks for letting me talk in depth about this stuff because there's a lot going on in this weird head of mine. And so thanks for humoring that. Slash
Well,
sorry for derailing you.
no, well, it's also refreshing to know I'm not the only one that's got a mind that's going 85 miles an hour right now. It's really refreshing. It's relatable to me. So that's why I'm like, no, let him have the mic. I fucking love it.
Keep being a weirdo, man.
Dude, absolutely. You too.
It's what it's all about, you know?
Exactly. And keep putting art first and keep reminding ourselves of that fucking spark because look what happens. When we put two sparks together, we get good, solid conversations. And this is what this is all about. So thanks again so much for your time, dude. And just tell everyone where to find your music, where to find this rad fucking vinyl that I'm now going to get because you didn't stand me up.
Well, yeah, I didn't stand you up, and also I'm not going to let you pay for one. So we can argue about that later if you want, or I can just send you one and you can accept it as a gift. But if you want to go support independent music and you want to buy a copy and you want to check my music out, it's darkerlightermusic.com. That takes you to my store and all the links. And if you just search Darker Lighter, the album is self-titled. So if you just search Darker Space Lighter, you'll find it on all the anywhere music is listened to. I'm on not all the social media platforms. Shocker, I don't have a TikTok. But you can find me at Darker Lighter Music on all the stuff, all the Instagram, Facebook. I think am I on Facebook? Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on all those.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time, dude. I am just like, I'm over the moon. I'm literally going to slam this laptop shut and feel like I conquered the entire fucking month because of you.
Brad, I'm glad. Well, thanks for the time and again, thanks for having me. That was really fun. One last question. Is it going to be video and audio or both or
It'll be both. So it'll be video on Spotify and YouTube, and it'll be on audio for Apple, iHeart, all the other ones.
okay, stoked. I'm stoked to share it and it'll be great. So,
Which is why I was like, we got to fix that lighting in the beginning, because I need you to look good for your angles. I didn't want to talk about how hot you looked in a fucking soccer jersey if no one could see what you look like?
yeah, I appreciate that. The light's hitting me and it's better. So, yeah.
Lighting's everything. Thank you so much, dude. Take care.
Have a good day.
You as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, if you've made it this far, don't forget to follow the socials on the screen or in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. See you next week.